Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's Monday night. So, yeah, this is the Shadow's Maw, and that can only mean one thing. It's the year of Trek. And tonight we're going to look at the second movie of the 12 Star Trek movies we have to get through here. We're going to look at The Wrath of Khan! Sorry, I had to do it at least once. Now it's out of the way. So, of course, joining me for this, we have the same two that we had last month. Unfortunately, our special guest could not make it, so it's just going to be us again. We have James Phoenix from the Lair of the Phoenix.
Hello.
We have Chriz the Mole from the Mole Hole.
And I'm here because nothing quite says President's Day like a sarcastic Brit.
That's true, and it is President's Day. Well, at least it's still President's Day across the country. So happy President's Day to everyone, and yes.
I'm going to make the joke, you're using the wah-wah wrong because you're supposed to use that if it's not a good joke. It clearly was. As I highlighted President's Day, and Marcus giggled, and so did you. Thus, you're using it incorrectly.
I was using it for irony.
But again, I thank you. And that is becoming one of my catchphrases. I thank you.
It is.
Neat.
Which is a reference to Dave Gorman.
I don't know who that is.
As you never will.
Okay then.
No. It's a comedian in the UK who has a show.
Ah.
Fair enough. But yes, Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. Yeah, so many changes from the movie we reviewed last month from the motion picture. First and foremost, new uniforms, which they use for the remainder of the original series movies, which I have to say I like the new uniforms. It's far better than the streamlined Phase 2 wannabe uniforms. And the uniforms I speak of course, are the iconic burgundy uniforms, which you'll find images of on Google and whatnot.
Can I say, I like the new uniforms. I actually really did like Kirk's Cerberus uniform, the white and black one.
Cerberus.
Well, I'm sorry, that's what it looks like. It looks like Miranda's Cerberus outfit.
Maybe that's where BioWare got the inspiration.
There you go.
Possibly. Well, like I said, I really did like that look for Kirk, which is a shame because he changed out of it multiple fucking times throughout the course of the first film. I like that look. That was a great commanding military-ish uniform.
Yeah.
Which I understand some Trekkies may not have liked, but I liked it. I actually preferred that to this one, but I do like the new one.
Fair enough. And Jim, what did you think?
I agree. I like the uniform. It's certainly better than the one in the last movie.
Yeah.
I thought it was a good uniform. I've never really been a big fan of the movie uniforms, particularly because I'm of the general opinion. For one thing, I do kind of like it has that flap across the front. I don't like when characters are lazy and leave it open. I think that makes it look really unprofessional as shit. I understand it's because they're being casual, but still, it looks terrible. I'm not a big fan of people. If you're wearing an outfit, don't make it look casual. If you're wearing an outfit that's supposed to look professional, look professional in it.
It's Kirk. Is he ever professional?
I know, I'm just saying. At least when Picard was going to be casual, okay, he put on a jacket, but he still looked professional in his jacket because it was designed to be open.
It's Picard. Does he know how to be casual?
But I would make the case when you say because it's designed to be open. Isn't your complaint that this has a flap that's designed to be open or closed, like a jacket can be? And if it's open with it being Kirk, isn't this basically that style of boss where you go into their office and they've taken off their tie and they've undone their top couple of buttons in their suit because now they're just like you?
True, I'm just saying, because of the way the flap looks when it opens, it doesn't look like it's meant to be open. It looks like you need about to close your damn uniform. That was my point. It didn't look like it was meant to be open. And the other thing I've always disliked about those uniforms is I always felt the shoulder pads were way too bulky.
Yep, they look like women from the 80s.
Pretty much. That's pretty
Yeah,
much.
well-
They just I like how they uniforms can have shoulder pads like not the first 2 seasons but the latter 5 seasons of Next Gen when they got the more recognizable next to uniforms. They had shoulder pads, but they weren't over-the-top shoulder pads. They were enough to make everybody look professional and cool, except Troy, who refused to wear the damn things. But everybody else, when I didn't look good on them. It was okay. It was a professional uniform. But when Kirk's wearing this big-ass jacket, he looks like a god. He looks like Q in that episode of Next Gen where he was wearing like a freaking field marshal's uniform from like the 1800s. That's what he looks like.
Yeah, well, this uniform was designed in the 1980s, so what do you expect?
I know, I'm just saying. It looks kind of, I don't know. I never liked that particular uniform.
Power suit.
It was designed in the 1980s, but again, I say it was more like the women in the 80s with the shoulder pads, because I don't remember Marty in Back to the Future having giant-ass female shoulder pads.
Nope, just a life vest.
He did.
The male equivalent to big-ass shoulder pads?
Apparently.
And I will also say, I really hope people didn't tune in late to our review and wonder why the fuck we were going into detail about Kirk's flap.
That's another review.
This is true.
No, it's not. We're not doing another review.
And I'd like
Yes,
to.
we are. We're doing another 11 reviews.
Yes, pay attention to your own show.
Which is the rest of this and the other ones.
Indeed.
I mean, we're not doing a review of Kirk's flap.
It'll come up again.
Oh, yeah.
Probably.
That gives me a huge Star Trek.
Ha!
Thank you.
Where's the damn?
Thank you. Mole out. I've met my contractual obligations. I'm out.
He has. Jesse, if you want to hear more about Kirk's flap, stay tuned for the next episode of Two Birds, One Show.
In 3D.
In 3D. Anyway, I'd like to make the point that, yes, the uniforms were designed in the 80s, but the fact of the matter is, it was 1991 by the time they stopped using them. They were a little out of date, even when they were designed, let alone by 1991 when Star Trek VI came out.
But again, fashion comes full circle, and this is the future.
Yeah, where's my wah-wah noise?
Or they didn't use them to be fashionable, they used them to be practical.
True.
There you go. What did you guys think of the whole Bones giving Kirk a pair of glasses and working in why he has to wear glasses?
Given how they're portrayed in the movie, please don't use the words Kirk, Bones, and Hole in the same sentence again.
Yeah. I'll say the scene itself wasn't bad, and it was cool that they tried to explain it, because stuff like that, if they hadn't explained it, well, actually, to be fair, back in the 80s, do you know what would have happened if they hadn't explained it? Nothing. People would have accepted the film, be like, okay, it happened in between movies. Nowadays, if that happens, people would be on Twitter going, OMG, he's now wearing glasses, continuity error much, ha, and then acting like they just totally found a fucking, goof within the movie.
Pretty much.
And then Kirk's glasses would become a massive meme, like dancing Peter Parker.
Mm-hmm. And, so good.
It is so good.
But yeah, I agree. And in all fairness, it worked well because William Shatner was visibly older, surprisingly so, between the first movie and the second movie. So it kind of worked that, okay, yeah, he's obviously older now. His eyes aren't as good as they used to be. He can probably use the glasses, although I'm relatively sure that unless Kirk was just one of those guys who liked to be old school, which to some extent he was, I feel like even by the century that the original Kirk Trek stuff is happening in, they would have perfected LASIK by then.
Well, like McCoy said, there was a procedure to take care of that, but Kirk was allergic to it, so therefore he couldn't actually perform the procedure, which is why he bought him glasses.
Okay,
He's allergic to lasers?
Yeah, that's kind of...
Well, I don't know if it was laser, but it's the procedure they use in the 23rd century to repair eyes.
Well, in all fairness, Mole, those aren't lasers, those are phasers. They're a completely different technology.
Yeah, I was going to say, I remember the episode of Star Trek where Kirk got shot by one of the phaser guns, and because it's a laser, like what they treat with the eyes, someone had to go and get him his insulin.
That's not even medically right by today's standards.
It was filmed in the 80s.
He makes a valid point. Yeah, I can't remember if it was allergies or something, but for whatever reason, they made up a medical reason why Kurt couldn't have the procedure done. So therefore, Bones was like, "Well, here's a pair of glasses. So at least you can see."
Mm-hmm. Why do I get the feeling that wasn't the original script, and when they went to film it, they wrote that in because Shatner legitimately couldn't read the fucking script?
I
Or
would
maybe,
say-
or maybe because it's a different director, they assumed he couldn't read the script based on how often he kept pausing.
Touche.
I would say yes, except they then broke the glasses halfway through the movie.
True. But then he got them back at the end of the movie, didn't he?
Well, I would make the case because I can't remember if these were in the 80s. I understand they probably weren't, but by today's standards, wouldn't he have contact lenses? Because he seems more of the dude that would want to look still like he is. Like Kirk's famous for wanting to sleep with the women and stuff. So he reminds me of the middle-aged guys that when they go grey dye their hair, or you know what I mean, or get like a Porsche or something like that. So it looks like he's still the cool young guy to sleep with the women. So shouldn't he have gone contact lenses to seem younger?
True. Yeah, you would think they would have given him some
Yeah.
sort of contact.
Or if he wanted to see both really cool and up at the times, he should have gotten a visor.
Ha! I don't think that technology was around yet.
It must have been, because one of Picard's ancestors, called Xavier, had a student with one. I thank you.
Continuity. Boom.
But yeah, so basically, I'm pretty sure most, if not all, the people listening to this have actually seen Wrath of Khan, but I'll run through it anyway. Chekhov is no longer with the Enterprise. He's on some Miranda-class vessel. And they get called to a science station manned by Dr. Carol Marcus and her son, Dr. David Marcus.
So Carol's your first name?
Ha! Funny.
You're welcome.
Yes, that is the same Carol Marcus that Jim Kirk boned in the television series. So you do the math.
And that he apparently will bone in Star Trek 3 of the Abrams verse.
Okay, do the maths. Okay, a starship can travel approximately on a slow day around a third of the speed of light. Calculate on how often it would have to be for it to be anchored inside there. I do the maths and I work out Kirk has a penis of 3.2 inches.
Ha.
Wrong math?
Wrong math.
It's Star Trek. All math and science talk are correct because nobody knows what the hell anybody else is saying.
Or that. But yeah, so they go to answer the call, and Chekhov and the captain of that vessel beam down to the nearby, I think it was a moon of the main planet, to check for life and to make sure things are ripe for terraforming, because the two Dr. Marcuses work with a team that have developed a device called Project Genesis, which is a device that instantly terraforms a planet, killing all life on it and terraforming it for new life.
And I will say, what is that captain's name?
I don't remember.
Oh, I feel like we should have remembered it as it's a part of history, and he was black, and it's February.
There is logic in what he says.
That's right,
I can
people.
find out.
I'm both topical and then really outdated at the same time.
Indeed.
It's an art form.
And apparently is an art form, one that you have apparently studied well.
Yep, much like the Etch-a-Sketch.
Mm-hmm. Etch-a-Sketch. Yes.
At least that's what I assumed Taylor Swift was singing about when she said "Shake It Off."
And it should be mentioned that is Reliant Captain Clark Terrell, played by Paul Weaver.
Yeah, Terrell.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But yes, so Captain Terrell, or Terrell, whatever, and Chekhov go down to this planet. It's a desert wasteland planet. And they find the ruins of a ship, which Chekhov discovers is the SS Botany Bay. At which point he goes, "Holy shit, we need to get the fuck out of here." And Terrell's like, "Why? Why do we have to get out of here?" He's like, "Don't question me, even though you're the captain. Just fucking follow me. We're getting the hell out of here." They turn around, run, and they get caught by Khan. Because SS Botany Bay. It's basically, long story short, Khan uses. Oh, and at this point, I want to talk about continuity errors here. Khan looks at Chekhov and says the line, "I never forget a face."
Yep, but as I said to you with that, I would make the case: is that a continuity error? Due to the fact Chekhov seems to have known him from files. Logically, with Khan being a tactical genius that he was, surely he would have researched the crew and not just hoped and prayed that eventually they would stumble upon him.
Yes, I would say. Well, okay. First of all, the error here for those keeping track at home is the fact he goes, "I never forget a face." He goes, "I know your face. I never forget your face," something like that. And
I've
it's
drawn
basically
accustomed to your face.
no. Like, I know you. I never forget a face. And the continuity error is the fact that Chekhov wasn't part of the Enterprise crew when they discovered Khan. So Khan never actually met Chekhov, therefore never would have seen his face. Now, your argument would hold water if it wasn't for the fact that I seriously doubt the SS Botany-based computers were still tied into the Federation network. They
True,
probably would have cut that shit off when they marooned him there, so he would have been stuck on that planet with the Botany Bay. He wouldn't have had access to any type of computer databanks of the Federation.
I would make the case if he has to, because
Why?
as the first film established, this is a different Enterprise, and yet he still knew its weaknesses. When it had different workings out than the first one, because Kirk himself didn't understand how this ship works. So logically, based on the fact Khan knows how this ship works, he must have done some sort of research.
Well, logically speaking, one could infer that Khan did the research when he got on board the Miranda-class vessel, because that ship would have been connected to the Federation databases, and there would have been plenty of time between the point in time he commandeered the ship and the time the Enterprise finally showed up at Genesis. He would have had enough time to do the research.
True, but the fact of the matter is, I think it makes far more sense. Given Khan is supposed to be a genius, I think it makes far more sense that, stuck on a planet or not, Khan would have jury-rigged some type of subspace hack signal to hack into subspace to get a hold of the Starfleet files.
He would have, but I was making the case of with Chekhov being there, and he was in the first film. In the first film, they say this is a new vessel. If he has any sort of information upon that vessel, he must have information about that crew because they're the same time.
Which is true. Interesting side note from the good people at Wikipedia.
Of course.
The Star Trek books have tried to rationalize the discrepancy. In the novelization of the film, written by Vonda and McIntyre, Chekhov is, quote, an ensign assigned to the Night Watch, end quote, during the episode Space Seed, and met Khan in an off-screen scene. The non-canonical novel, To Reign in Hell, The Exile of Khan Noonien Singh, explains the error by having Chekhov escort Khan to the service of Ceti Alpha after the events of the television episode.
Yeah, which I say my one makes more sense.
I agree.
It's just logical based on the movie in the first movie.
Yeah, I just find it interesting that they kind of overlooked it and they didn't, explain it. Explain how he knows Chekhov. And it's also weird that Chekhov isn't surprised that he knows who he is. So I don't know. I don't know what the movie makers were thinking, but fair enough.
Yeah, that is also true. But I'd say, based on the fact Chekhov knows who he is, I'd say maybe Chekhov isn't surprised because Chekhov probably assumed he's done research himself. Of course, this is all just thoughts and obviously, theories or whatever you'd call it,
Right.
based on what we've seen. But to me, it wasn't as bad an error, if that makes sense, because I was like, I have a reason for it, but I understand other people may not have agreed with that theory.
Right. Fair enough. So yes, Khan uses mind control worms that vary into their larvae of a being that he found on the moon. There was it Ceti Alpha 6 or whatever that he landed on.
If they're larva, does that mean I have to tell Stacy they're a portal?
Ha! I see what you did there. Yes. Yeah, they're these little larvae. They burrow through your ear and attach themselves to your eardrum, taking control of your mind, making you weak to suggestion, and then eventually killing you. And so he uses them to basically mind control Terrell, and Chekhov commandeers their ship. and then uses the Dr. Marcus's and Genesis to draw Kirk out there because revenge. Now, Mole brought up an interesting point regarding the Marcuses and Kirk, and the fact that if you look at Kirk's hairdo in Wrath of Khan compared to the motion picture, in the motion picture, Kirk had straight hair. He had more the hairstyle he had on the TV show. On the Wrath of Khan, he has more what his natural hairstyle would have been at the time, Shatner's hairstyle, and he had more curlier hair. And Mole came up with an interesting theory of they might have done that so that he looks similar to David Marcus, who also has curly hair, so they could, establish that, yes, they are in fact father and son, which I was like, good point.
Yep.
What do you think, Jim?
I think that makes sense.
Fair enough.
That's one of the easiest things that you can change without too much effort to make it, to portray that similarity.
Indeed. So also, a new crew member introduced for this movie in the form of Lieutenant Saavik, played by a thin, very thin, well, relatively thin, Kirstie Alley. She's a Vulcan, and actually she's the one that opens up the movie taking the Kobayashi Maru test, which she of course fails because there's really no way to win it, because Kobayashi Maru is literally the no-win scenario.
Unless you're Kirk.
And,
unless you're Kirk, who totally won it.
Mm-hmm. He did.
Yep. Which is ironic because Kirk is the one administering and overseeing the Kobayashi Maru. So, yeah, go Federation.
Woo!
And so, of course, she's assigned to the Enterprise, and so throughout the movie, she and Spock talk, and she and Kirk talk, and she's trying to figure out, what the correct answer would have been, and Kirk's like, well, it's a no-win scenario. There is no correct answer, and she asks him, how did you win it? Because Kirk was like the only person to ever do it, and he just kind of smiles. He's like, yeah, wouldn't you like to know? He eventually does tell her, to which she's like, you cheated.
Yeah. Which
he's like, I don't like to lose, which is a recurring theme. I don't like to lose.
Yeah, which I will also say with this character is we found out after the fact, and it was kind of fun to find out just because of what my complaint was during the film. But apparently there was a deleted scene or so where she was meant to be half Romulan, which would explain it, because my complaint during this film is she didn't act like a Vulcan. She seemed a little too cheery and emotional for a Vulcan.
Yeah.
Which made me say, I don't like her as a Vulcan. I find that and I'm like, okay, based on that would have made more sense, but because that wasn't in the film, it's still like, you don't belong as a Vulcan. What the fuck was her name, T'Pol or whatever she was called?
T'Pol, yeah.
Which they fix in Star Trek 3 Search for Spock, because Robin Curtis, who plays Saavik in that one, they actually wrote the character to be a Vulcan. They took out the Romulan thing, so she actually is more Vulcan in that one. And then they would apply the half Romulan thing to another character later, but we're getting ahead of ourselves here. The other thing that you did mention, Mole, with regards to Saavik, is that everybody in the movie refers to her as Mr. Saavik.
Yep.
Indeed.
And part of the reasoning for that is because in the original script, Saavik was a dude.
I thought it was the only reason for it.
Yeah, well, I think they also used the argument of, well, even in the military they do that, to which Gene Roddenberry's like, no, they don't.
Yeah, which I think he would know.
Yeah. But, I mean, it still kind of works, so it's okay. That's a minor thing. But, yes, in case people were wondering, that is why Saavik is called Mr. Saavik. And it's weird no one thought to question that, except for, like, Gene Roddenberry. But, yeah, they obviously didn't give a shit about him. Well, nobody in the production.
Yep. Which it was a little weird, but
yeah. So Khan lures Kirk there by basically hailing the research station, saying, he has like Terrell and Chekhov hail it. Actually, Chekhov is the one talking to Dr. Marcus, saying, we need to take Genesis and do something with it, by orders of Starfleet. And she goes, well, under whose orders? And he says Kirk, James T. Kirk, Admiral Kirk. And that's what draws Kirk out there, because Kirk's like, I didn't order shit. I've been here doing a shakedown cruise with the Enterprise and trying to teach the new Academy recruits and stuff, how to be officers. So it's like, well, fuck, now I have to go out there. Under the excuse of we're the closest ship. Bullshit. It's you want to go clear your name because you're James C. Kirk.
Yeah, which after Jim.
I was going to make the point of, and also it's going to be, a shakedown crew is supposed to be a bare bones crew. So I understand you're teaching, but it's going to be even teaching what shakedown crews brings a full senior staff with them.
Well, it's not a shakedown cruise. It's he's on board to basically to teach the new crew of the Enterprise. They have the senior staff, but then they have the new staff like Saavik and whatnot on board, and Spock is the captain of the Enterprise. So he's basically there just to see how the crew operates under the command of Spock and stuff to make sure everything goes well. And then shit hits the fan, and he has to take command. And I like that in this movie, unlike the motion picture, Kirk is reluctant to take command. He's like, I don't want to do that. I'm not going to do that to you, Spock. And Spock's like, you do realize I'm Vulcan and I don't have an ego to bruise. Take command of your ship, Jim.
Yeah. Well, that might be also partly due to the fact he respects Spock. He doesn't respect new guy.
True. Good point.
And I was going to make the comment of, based on this as technically identity fraud of Kirk, the Star Trek stuff is basically, as they've said themselves, and they have established, it's meant to be the Navy has now transcended into space travel because it's the Navy. Shouldn't this have been a job for NCIS Space?
I believe that's Starfleet Internal Affairs.
I believe it's NCIS Space.
And it would be if it wasn't for the fact that they had a planet-destroying terraforming device in the hands of Khan. Of course, they didn't know it was Khan at the time, but still. And actually, as we find out, not in the hands of Khan until Kirk basically delivers it to him, but I'm getting a little ahead of myself. So, Enterprise, gets there and pretty much has a short fight with Khan in which they, damage Khan's ship. Khan damages the Enterprise. Khan retreats. Enterprise checks out the facility. Kirk beams down with McCoy and Saavik. And they find that the research facility is empty except for a bunch of corpses. And the Genesis device is gone. Which is because, as was alluded to by a previous scene, the Dr. Marcuses were like, yeah, we're going to take Genesis and we're getting the fuck out of here. Fuck Starfleet.
Yep. Which I feel at this point I should mention, I don't like Khan's outfit. I think the actor who played Khan did a good job, ish, to a certain degree, but I don't like the outfit of him and his crew. They look like a fucking 80s hairband group, and I don't like
they do. I think they were going more for a space pirate look, but yeah, they totally do. With the fucking big hair and mullets and the fucking... Look, I'm bare-chested because I'm a sex icon.
Yeah, and some of them even had hairbands.
Yeah, they did. You could tell that those outfits, more than any of the other outfits in pretty much almost any of the classic Star Trek, was completely designed and inspired by the 80s.
Yeah, which... The previous stuff in Star Trek and some of the other films, it's all like Borg and the Borg Empire, the Klingon and the Klingon Empire and stuff like that. This is basically Khan and the Pussycats.
Yeah, it is. Though I do have to say, I like his initial outfit, his sand nomad outfit, where he's got the fucking sand cloak and the visor, the mask.
Yep, but he disrobed awfully fast.
Yes, he did, because he has to bear his manly chest.
Yeah, I feel like a good villain, and I don't mean any offense by this, I feel like a good villain should be someone that you can agree with their ideals, logic, and also sometimes a good villain is someone that you'd be like, okay, I could totally sit down and have a drink with this dude or invite him to my house, even though you know that if you crossed them, they'd be evil. I kind of feel like Khan I wouldn't want in my house because he disrobed awfully fast.
Yeah.
I don't want to be like, okay, I'm just going to go and get a Coke. Come back in the room, he's got no pants on.
Yeah, I also feel that outfit was completely wrong for Khan for two reasons. One, given the age of Ricardo Montalban, the actor who played Khan, because yeah, this was more towards the tail end of his career when he was aging, and the fact that you look at the outfits and stuff, you compare it to what Ricardo Montalban wore as Khan originally in the TV series in like the 70s, you're like, that's not something Khan would wear. And okay, fair enough, you want to update the look, you want to go from a 70s look to an 80s look, but Khan's look in the original series was a more militaristic look. It was sleek. He wore like a wrapped shirt and stuff like that, so he looked kind of militaristic. And it's like I see Khan as being more militaristic, not all space pirate nomad.
Yeah, what I see with Khan, based on his character and the dynamics, I don't know if you would agree, Jim, but I feel he's basically, and for lack of a better term, I don't mean any insults to this, he's basically the Venom.
Yeah.
Yeah, you look at him and he's essentially supposed to be what Kirk is, but if it was evil. And I know Mirror Universe before someone says that, but he's supposed to be like an evil version of Kirk with his crew. I feel if he hijacked the ship he did and stuff, this would have been a great opportunity to use the uniforms from the previous film, even more so if people didn't like them, put him in like the white and black uniforms and stuff that they had then, and have him wear that. So, okay, what was your problem with that? It was too dark and gringy and gritty and military looking. Perfect for your villain.
Yeah.
And if he stole something that's from the Federation, perfect that he would have their clothes.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing, too. He's on the SS Botany Bay. You would have thought, his first source of clothing, assuming he didn't want to wear what he was wearing when he was frozen, you would assume his first source of clothing would have been, I don't know, the crew quarters on board the Botany Bay?
Yeah.
The clothes that are already there? That doesn't look like something that would have been on board the Botany Bay.
Yeah, but what does Jim think?
Yeah, I agree. The outfits were a little exorbitant and ridiculous. I understand they're trying to make it like a cool future space villain, and like space pirate deal, but it did look like an '80s hairband. Like there was no reason for it, and it just was a little out there. I understand they're trying to show off Ricardo Montalban and his body and everything, but it's kind of weird to the point that it's in Star Trek Online, and I won't wear it. And I always think it's weird when I see other characters wearing it.
I will make the case: space pirates are supposed to have armor, their tail wrapped around them, and a scouter.
I will say this about Ricardo Montalban, though. Despite his age, yeah, he's one of the few people of that age at any given point in time throughout history that could actually pull the look off.
Oh my God!
Bearing his chest.
I just realized something. With how much he bears his chest, it's not even like slightly. It's like all the way down his body and stuff, and it's like slightly furry, his outfit. Color that outfit to just be furry and match his hair color, and is that not a Super Saiyan 4?
Yeah, pretty much.
Nah.
It is. That's basically the Super Saiyan 4 fur or vest, yes. Because I believe, doesn't Vegeta wear a vest? Goku has just the bare fur.
I believe they both have the fur, but they're slightly modified to suit one or the other.
Ah, fair enough. But yeah, so Khan is off licking his wounds while the Enterprise crew beams down to the station, and Enterprise goes and hides behind the moon there, the planet, so Khan can't pick them up. And Kirk's like, if I don't come back in 2 hours, to Spock, like if you don't hear from us in 2 hours, then like do what you have to do or whatever. Basically giving him orders to basically fuck us, save the crew, and stop Khan kind of thing. And so they go down there, they find, like I said, the bodies, the Genesis device is gone. And so they start looking around to try to figure out where the Genesis device went, and they find the transporters and find that they've been recently used. So they use the transporters to follow, to which Savik says, but if we go there, we're going to lose contact with the Enterprise. What's going to happen if we can't get a hold of the Enterprise in 2 hours? And Kirk's like, well, you heard me giving the orders. He's going to go take care of Khan. We're kind of screwed if we do it, so fuck it, let's go. To which Savik's like, that's not logical. But they go anyway. And that's where they find the Dr. Marcus's. And I think, was it just the two of them, or did any of the other scientists survive? I don't remember. Either of you remember?
I can't remember, but I will say, while
Any
you were,
other what survive?
Scientists.
Oh,
It was just the Dr. Marcus's, right?
yeah,
I believe so. Yes.
I think it was
Okay.
just main characters survived and non-main characters perished, as is the trope with Star Trek.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
pretty much
will-
it was pretty much the only survivors were the Marcuses and then that one dude that betrayed them and then Kirk shot him.
Yeah, which
Mhm.
I will also say for the people listening, while we were speaking then, because what we mentioned, because I know Jim hasn't seen anything to do with much to do with the Dragon Ball stuff. I did post him a picture of Super Saiyan 4 Vegeta,
Yeah,
to
I
which
see.
Jim said yes, completely accurate.
Yeah, okay, yeah, he's
God.
a person neither than aware of us. Fair enough. But I should also mention when they're on the station, they do find Terrell and Chekhov stuffed into some sort of locker, and
Space
McCoy,
bullies.
yeah, McCoy kind of checks on them. They seem to be okay, and so they go with them to beam over to look for the Marcuses. They find the Marcuses, and like Jim said, Marcus and one other guy who tries to shoot Jim Kirk like a dumbass and gets vaporized for his troubles.
Yeah, which I have to ask as well, based on the time in Star Trek, it wasn't that early before the next gen, and he just wanted to send someone down to a planet just to explore quickly and see what was going on and not risk lives. Shouldn't he have had some sort of android at this point, since Data was created by the time next gen rolls around? Surely something should be in place as some sort of android at this point in time, or some sort of robot, especially considering the first film was about something we sent into space, which means it's clearly after our time, and we've sent space probes before now with robotic.
You would think so. I think at this time, Dr. Sung was probably developing the robots and he hadn't perfected the android technology yet, which is why nobody has one.
True, that's what I was talking about. Like, they could have sent something like the Mars rover style stuff just to
Right.
go and look.
True.
Probe.
So they find the Dr. Marcuses, they find the Genesis device, and then it's revealed that both Terrell and Chekhov are still firmly under alien baby mind control.
Well, firmly is debatable.
Yeah, which I will make the comment as well. If you're from the UK, it's called the Mega Drive device.
Ha! There you go.
It's really not. It's really not.
Yeah. Although, I don't know, I've never seen the Japanese translation of it. That could have been the Japanese translation for it.
It could have been.
But, so Khan basically orders Terrell to shoot Kirk, and he proceeds to fight the power. No, fight the mind control, and then shoots himself in the head and vaporizes himself instead of killing Kirk. So yeah. So in a movie, number one, black guy doesn't die first. Number two, black guy is not killed by the villain. He kills himself in basically self-sacrifice. So I thought that was kind of cool.
Well, kind of by the villain, because it was really the villain making him do it. Because he was like, fight, and he struggles, so it's still through the villain's actions. But yes, it is cool that it was self-sacrificed. It was sort of like throwing yourself onto the grenade, which is kind of cool.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And
a whole space station full of people died before he did, so yeah.
Yes, but I'd like to point out that you cannot count generic side characters when you're doing the death tally.
I would also assume that Khan killed off his entire crew except for him and Chekhov, so yeah.
Still, they
never
were.
see them again.
Yes, but they were also side characters. You never even get names for them.
Yeah, including a guy that conspicuously looks like Jim. So yeah, you never told us your dad had a role, dude.
Funny.
Which I have to ask, is that a running joke in the next 12? Is that going to be a running joke in the next 12 Star Trek films?
What's that?
People who look like Jim on board the Enterprise? Is he like?
If there are any.
Is he like Space Waldo?
Yeah, where's Jimmy?
Yeah, because in the first film there was someone who looks just like Jim who got vocal neck pinched.
This is true. We're 2 for 2 so far. Keep it going, Trek.
Jim Star Trek Kenny.
Aha.
But yeah, so Terrell shoots himself. Chekhov basically collapses from the larva in his ear, And when he hits the ground, for whatever reason, instead of killing Chekhov, the larva decides to let go and wiggle its way out, only to, I believe, be shot by Kirk. I'm not exactly sure, but I know they kill it at some
Yeah,
point.
Kirk shot it.
And then, of course,
I believe that whole thing was probably a little bit to show, sort of, like when the guy in question, the captain who was able to fight it enough to kill himself, I think they were trying to go for the fact Chekhov was stronger willed, so was able to just fight it off earlier, thus it would die or leave sooner. Because
Right.
isn't Chekhov meant to be a brilliant mind? No, I'm not saying like a genius scientist, but I mean he's meant to be a
Right.
brilliant mind or strong-willed, so I think that's what they were going for. Subtly, but I don't know if that's the case or if I'm reading way too much into it.
What's a possibility? It's certainly valid. So McCoy checks him out and lays him down to rest. Chekhov's fine. He's just, he's just really worn out and convalescing from the damage in his eardrum and brain. And so he goes with Savik and David Marcus to go check out, because they're in a cave, and they go to check out the interior of the cave while Jim Kirk and Carol Marcus reconnect and talk about what's been going on and stuff. And you find out that that Carol never told Jim about his son and stuff because he never wanted to know, kind of thing. And that, she knew that he would want to be out in space and wouldn't want to settle down with kids, yada, 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 the whole, your one true love is your ship, and I know that, and I respect that.
Oh,
so I never told him that you were his father either.
Oh, come on. You couldn't have imagined the Enterprise flying through space with a baby on board sign?
Ha! The Enterprise D, maybe. But yeah, so this whole time, of course, David Marcus, not knowing that Jim Kirk is his father, completely hates Jim Kirk. And this is the point where you discover that the cave that they're in was actually a cave that they had been testing the Genesis device. Oh, and I should also mention, after Terrell kills himself, Khan just beams the Genesis device out of the cave, laughs evilly, and says, "Yeah, you're all fucking dead. Bye." And leaves. But so they go into the interior of the cave, and you see that the interior of the cave has been terraformed by what I assume was they used a smaller prototype version of what's in the Genesis device just to see if the technology would even work. Which of course it does. And they're like, "Holy shit, you were able to do this with the Genesis device?" To which Bones is like, "Yeah, see, Jim, I told you, this stuff should never be in the hands of anybody. This is basically a mass genocide weapon at this point."
Which I believe as well, we also found out, just because you guys like to mention that stuff, didn't we also find out that was originally supposed to be like a big nuke bomb thing, and they didn't want the Enterprise to be in possession of a big-ass weapon, so they seemed nicer. So they made it something that would have some sort of practical, non-war-like use.
Yeah, there was, from what I recall, it was supposed to be a Federation doomsday weapon, and then, like, I don't know if it was Roddenberry or somebody was like, "Yeah, the Federation would never have a doomsday weapon. They're a group of peace, not war." It's like, okay, well, we're going to give them a doomsday weapon in the form of a terraforming device. Because that's better.
It's better only because what can you use a doomsday device for besides evil? You could use a terraform device, and I think Jim would agree, you could use a terraform device to, say, go onto a completely deserted, uninhabitable planet and turn it into something where life can now grow.
True. Although then an argument could be made of, who are we to determine what can and can't bear life?
We are human. Therefore, we believe we are God.
That still does not give us the right to determine what kind of climate and planet can and can't bear life. Because as it's already been established through current technology, through shit we've sent up into space, we have found life in places that we would have deemed uninhabitable. But because, as cheesy as this is going to sound, as Dr. Ian Malcolm from Jurassic Park is fond of saying, life will find a way. And apparently it's kind of true, because yeah, life has adapted on these other planets to survive in places where we thought life would not be possible.
In all fairness, in most of those
I
places, there was only evidence that life used to be there, not that it's there now.
Yeah, but I was going to make the case as well of I believe they say to explore strange new worlds in Star Trek all the time.
To seek out
And
new
Yeah.
life and new civilizations.
yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong, but when a great explorers have explored our Earth that we're on ourselves, have we not just found life, or not life? Have we not just found islands and decided fuck it and build houses on it, or even gone onto that planet and killed the natives to take over it, High America, and stuff like that? So it's like, logically speaking, we would do that in space. We're human. That's kind of what we do. Explore to
That's
us
true.
means we're gonna take shit over because we're human. We claims it. We call
Yeah.
we call dibs basically. Exploring is
True.
space
Yeah,
dibs.
I agree. It sucks when countries march over and just take over random other countries. Hi, India and Australia.
Yep.
Pretty much. So they're all, coming to terms with the fact that they're going to be kind of stuck there. Sav was like, yeah, oh, we're going to be stuck there. And then all of a sudden you hear the chirp of the communicator, Jim, this is Spock. Are you ready? To which Saavik is like, the fuck? And Kirk's like, good man, Spock. He's like,
I don't like to
well,
lose.
yeah, he's like, well, the 2 hours is up. I don't like to lose. She's like, wait, you. He's like, wait, because the whole thing about Saavik that they harp on throughout the entire movie is that because for the Vulcan side of her, they try to say that she's always on about the code, like the uniform
rules.
code,
Starfleet
the rule,
rules, yeah.
Starfleet code, and Kirk's like, so quote me that rule again about what you do if your transmissions are being monitored, and she goes, you speak in code. He goes, exactly, and she's like, you spoke in code. You gave Spock a different order. He's like, I don't like to lose. And so they all get beamed out to the Enterprise, and by that point in time, the order that Kirk actually gave him was hide the fucking ship, repair it, so that in 2 hours' time you come pick us up and we go beat the shit out of Khan. That's basically his order.
Which I'm curious what code actually adapted into that.
It's a good question.
No idea. But
Yes.
hey, it's Kirk. So now back on board the Enterprise, and at this point, Khan has somewhat repaired his vessel, the Miranda class vessel out there. I keep forgetting the name of that ship, but and Khan has been actively looking for the Enterprise, and I'm kind of surprised that Kirk's first instinct is, would Khan be behind the planet, because you could hide a ship behind the planet, and of course they check and like, no, he's not there when they first show up, and so Kirk's like, well, okay, we're gonna hide behind the planet. And somehow Kirk knows that Khan is too stupid to look behind the planet. And I'm like, wait, Khan is supposed to be a genius tactician. How would his first instinct not be to, hey, let's look behind the giant-ass rock?
Yep, I can see that. And I will also make the case, if you keep forgetting its name, is it not then a UFO? Because it is an unidentified flying object.
There is logic in what he says. And also I make the point that sensors were not that good back then. It was unlike in next-gen time when you could do that, and even in next-gen time it worked. It's a pain in the ass. You can't just check behind a planet. It's a pain in the ass. Because as noted, in the scene they blatantly showed and worked up an effect for, both ships were rotating at the same time, so they were constantly on opposing sides of the planet, so Khan never would have seen him.
True.
They were simply worked up a special effects infographic to demonstrate this, as Spock comes to the bottom of the planet to pick them up, as Khan is around the top of the planet.
True.
Because even by the time, even 75 years later, in next-gen time, the Enterprise D constantly hid on polar ice caps or around parts of planets where they could not be detected.
True. Oh, it just seemed the way they shot it, it seemed like, to me, that Khan never even thought about looking, behind the fucking planet.
Probably because Khan's arrogant, he thought he was in control, and Kirk took advantage of that.
I'd make the case if it is true that, yeah, he probably should have looked, like you said, Marcus. But, yeah, I can also see that the technology wasn't there, so maybe he didn't think, because it's like, hey, Marcus, how often do you think, hey, I should just put on my jetpack and fly to work? Oh, you don't, because technology doesn't exist.
True.
I want a jetpack to go to work. I'm always thinking jetpack to go to work.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But yeah, so then Kirk gets the brilliant idea to fly the Enterprise into this, like, is it like a nebula or something that's nearby that obscures.
Yes, conveniently placed plot convenience nebula.
Yeah, that obscures sensors.
The
sensor
Mutara
technology.
the Mutara nebula.
Yeah, the Mutara Nebula, which they, again, another thing they saw on their way in, and they're like, yeah, we shouldn't go in there. That's going to fuck our sensors up. We need to find Khan. Well, now that they know Khan's there, now that Kirk's playing his arrogance, he's like, fly us into the nebula. Khan will follow us. He'll go blind.
Isn't that a running thing with Star Trek? I swear I've seen multiple Star Trek things with nebulas that are just there for plot convenience.
Yes.
Sort of
pretty
like anime convenience if we can now suddenly pull powers out our ass. Star Trek's version is Nebula.
Pretty much.
And ironically, most of said Deus Ex nebulas, obscure or otherwise, take out your sensors, which I'm like, really? Are those the only types of nebulas that exist in the universe?
Pretty much, although it is worth noting this one also took out their shields.
This is true, too.
I would make the case of if it was a nebula that reacted in a 100% different way to the previous nebula, wouldn't people then question it for continuity?
True.
Mm.
So, Kirk and company fly the Enterprise in, and Khan's ship stops, and Khan looks at his helmsman, his first officer, is like, the hell are you doing? He was like, sir, that's the Mutara Nebula. If we go in there, our sensors are going to get fucked. And Khan's like, good point. We're not going to go in there. And then Kirk hails him, like, Khan, what are you doing? Don't you want me? Don't you want to kill me? Come get me, you son of a bitch. And he says some other stuff. I can't remember exactly what it says, but he basically baits Khan into it, playing on his, as Jim alluded to earlier, his arrogance and his need to basically kill Kirk, to which Khan basically backhands his subordinate and flies the ship into the nebula.
No,
and that's when
full impulse power.
Yeah. To which we have the iconic battle scene that most Trekkies remember this movie for. And it is, at least was for its time, it was a really good scene. It's still a pretty good naval battle in space scene, but compared to what we've seen with more current and modern Trek, yeah.
And what we've seen with films that came before this.
Indeed.
True. Couldn't they have ended this?
Go ahead.
Couldn't they have ended this film in like 4 seconds?
Probably.
By turning on said doomsday device, terraform, and just teleport into his ship. Boom, it destroys the ship, everything inside, and kills them all. And at the same time, would destroy the device that should never fall into anyone's hands. Thus, the day is saved, and they can, I don't know, go bone blue chicks.
Well, I think it's well demonstrated that said plot convenience nebula also obscures transporters.
Yes, but I was on about before they went into the nebula. Couldn't they have just teleported on board? At some point during the film, couldn't that have just ended this film?
Well, no, because outside the nebula, they both had their shields up the whole time.
Yeah, but didn't Khan explicitly say he would lower his shields or something so he could send him something?
Did that happen, Marcus?
I don't remember.
I believe one of Khan's demands was he wanted something beamed to him.
Yeah, he wanted Kirk beamed to him.
Yeah, so couldn't Kirk just say, okay, I'm going to beam to you now, go to the transport, and just send the death thing instead?
He didn't have it at that point.
Yeah, the death thing was still at the lab at that time. Until Khan went over and stole the damn thing, because Khan's the one that had it the whole time. Until the space battle with Khan revealed that he had it, and when they went to the lab and found out Khan had already taken it, nobody had it. It was at the lab.
Also, Kirk never would have done that because he wouldn't have risked killing Terrell and Chekhov.
That too.
I risked killing people in the first.
Because he found out Khan was in control of the ship, but as far as he knew, there was still a complete complement of Starfleet officers alive being held captive on board that ship. He wouldn't risk those lives.
Which is fair enough. I just thought that would have ended it sooner.
It would have, yes.
It would have.
Because I will say that's one problem I have with this film.
That it drags on and on and on.
It drags way the fuck on, to the point where I argue to you it felt like 2 episodes of a show put together, because this would have been the perfect time to end an episode.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, we destroyed the villain, now he's back. Yeah, it's like a video game. You defeat the Eggman once, and suddenly he comes back the next level with a different form.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably how they designed it. Honestly, they probably wrote it like 2 episodes, because the motion picture, they tried to write it from the perspective of a movie, but in doing so, they lost sight of what made Star Trek Star Trek. So it didn't work. So they were like, well, to recapture what is Star Trek, we need to go back to what Star Trek originally was. That's TV. So let's make a story that would work as an episode of the TV show and expand it from there and make it, movie length and stuff.
Which it may do. Although
Yeah.
I posed the question of, to me personally, I think the first one ironically felt more like Star Trek.
Fair enough.
Because one thing I always got from Star Trek, with the original series at least, and some of the later ones too, while they did have some cheesy battles and filler episodes, some of it as well was also commentary on on us. It was like social commentary-ish to a certain degree, and it was at least thought-provoking a little bit. And the first one did give some interesting stuff with the ending, and it did raise some great questions and stuff. This one just seems to drag, and it's just like, yeah, let's stop generic villain. I really think this film's kind of bad for that.
Yeah.
A little
But at
bit.
the same time, the villain was what made this movie good. As you pointed out, they actually gave you a villain that you could get behind, you could understand, and you could really identify with, but also that the main hero characters could actually interact with, which the first movie sorely lacked and really needed. But yes, I can kind of agree with you, and I think again part of that is, I can agree with you that this one just dragged on and on and on, and it wasn't paced very well. Again, I think part of that was because the first movie was designed to be a movie, whereas this one wasn't necessarily this story.
And I was going to say,
kind of tell.
I made the case if I couldn't relate to Khan. I could not relate to Khan. I couldn't give a shit about what he did in this film. And personally, I think he's a really poor villain, to the point that it holds the film down to the same degree as the first film. Because your heroes are only as good as their villains, and ridiculous outfits and really thinly, fleshed out plot for the villain. It's like, really? And this one has way more nebula crap and stuff like that. It's like, coincidence and convenience, as opposed to the first one, which, I'm gonna say this film's overrated as hell.
It is.
If it makes you feel better, there was a scene that it's worth noting that Kirk's scenes and Khan's scenes, you'll note that Kirk and Khan never actually meet face to face in the same room. They always speak over a view screen because their scenes were filmed 4 months apart.
Which is another reason they probably didn't have chemistry, due to the fact you get great chemistry if you're filmed together with your hero and your villain, so they can react to how the other one's doing it and react properly.
Yeah.
Right.
They didn't even seem to have chemistry. A lot of times it felt like they were just doing the script.
Yeah. Which annoys me even more because it's noted here that in a draft script they had Khan defeating Kirk in a sword fight. I'm like, why isn't that in the movie?
That would have been a much more interesting story, because they would have been more physical, and that could have made at least a better scene than what we had.
Mm-hmm. And that could have been awesome because then they could have had an excuse for Sulu to teach Kirk how to sword fight.
Oh, because all Asians know how to sword fight. Racist.
You're an idiot.
I was aware of the joke. I was just making a racist joke.
Fair enough.
Fair enough, and I apologize. I completely missed what you guys had said before that, because I was plugging my headset in so it wouldn't die. But I think you were talking about some scene.
Basically, I mentioned that a draft...
Basically, we couldn't get any response from you, so we just gave the outro, so...
Uh-huh.
But no, I mentioned that in a draft script, it was noted that one of the things they deleted from the draft script was Khan defeating Kirk in a sword fight.
Fair enough.
Which Maul said that would have been a much more intriguing fight, would have added a little more drama and realism to the storyline overall. And then I made
on them not having chemistry together.
Yeah, and he said that they didn't have chemistry, and he said that they didn't have a lot of chemistry because scenes were filmed 4 months apart. Khan scenes and Kirk scenes, and Maul said that certainly hurt the chemistry, and that if they were together, it would have had much better chemistry because they could have reacted off each other more naturally. And then I mentioned the thing about the sword fight, and Maul said that would have helped too because that would have been a much more interesting climax of the film. And then I added that yes, then they would have had an excuse to have a scene where Sulu teaches Kirk how to sword fight.
And I heard that part. Okay, fair enough. But yeah, so you have your climactic starship battle, which was kind of cool. One thing I really did like about how they did this, action aside, because yeah, it was kind of boring, but I love that they made it a very cerebral fight. It was who can outthink whom, and it was Kirk exploiting the weaknesses of Khan. The fact that he's arrogant, the fact that he's egotistical, the fact that Khan hates to lose as much as Kirk does, if not more so. And go ahead.
I would agree with that if Khan did more thinking during this fight. But to me, this is basically the equivalent of, say, a Superman comic where instead of actually having some sort of a close fight or something for him to overcome, he literally just shows up and one hit punches the enemy off the screen and it's like over.
True.
Mm. But in reference to your earlier joke, well, how awesome would it have been if he defeated Khan and then Khan came back in a giant Khan robot?
That also would have been good. And I will also make the case of they should have totally included the sword thing, Jim.
Mm-hmm.
Because I believe, based on various stuff in the movie, then they would have had not being able to look behind a giant rock. They would have had a sword which represents scissors, and I'm sure there's something in here to represent paper.
There you go.
But yes, they fly around blind, not seeing each other, and apparently Kirk and crew can see outside the front windows, but Khan can't for some reason. I don't know. But they end up seeing the ship a couple times, and they fire. Khan does see the Enterprise as it's firing too, so it fires, and they damage each other's. Basically, Khan cripples the Enterprise's warp core. Effectively, they can't warp out. They have impulse, but they don't have warp. But the Enterprise basically cripples Khan's ship completely to the point that it's broken on fire, and her entire crew is basically dead, except for Khan, who's bleeding from the head. And so Khan, knowing that both ships are crippled and near each other, Khan's like, well, if I'm going to die, you're going with me, and he arms the Genesis device and detonates it on board the ship. And at that point, Spock gets up from his console and leaves and goes down to engineering.
And nobody notices, which I find unbelievable.
Yeah, nobody notices that Spock is gone. Spock just kind of looks up, he thinks for a second, and then leaves. And then you have the scene that everybody talks about. And I think this is why most Trekkies call this the best Star Trek ever, which debatable.
Highly,
yes. I think it's overrated as well. But he goes down there, and Scotty's knocked out because toxic fumes and injuries sustained during the attacks and stuff. And McCoy's down there tending to the wounded, and Spock grabs a couple of what look like tinfoil-lined gloves for dealing with radioactive isotopes in current.
Yeah, the gloves from Scotty's suit.
Yeah, they are, but it didn't look like it was too heavily redesigned. But he grabs gloves because he's going to go into the the intermix chamber or whatever and realign everything so they get warp power back. But the radiation there would kill a normal human, which McCoy says. He's like, you're insane. You can't go in there. It'll kill a human. That will almost instantly kill a normal human.
As you were so fond of pointing out, Doctor, I am not human.
Yeah, pretty much. And Spock.
Wasn't he half human?
He is.
He is. But McCoy's constantly pinching at him for being that goddamn Vulcan, so that's why he made a joke.
Yeah.
No, I'm saying with him being half human, shouldn't it half kill him?
It would still kill him. It kills biological beings. But
just not quite as fast.
Yeah, which is why he was actually able to do it. If he had been a full human, he probably wouldn't have been able to do it.
And if he had been a full Vulcan, he probably would have survived.
Maybe. But he asks McCoy to give him an analysis on Scotty because he's like, you're absolutely right, that would kill me. So how is Mr. Scott? And McCoy turns around like a dumbass and proceeds to give his diagnosis, at which point Spock Vulcan nerve pinches him, leans him up against a glass tube, and does a mind meld with him saying, remember. and then he proceeds to go kill himself. Yep, he goes into the radioactive tube, realigns, everything gets all the radioactive stuff back where it's supposed to be. The warp core comes back online, and Kirk's like, "You've done it, Scotty. Get us out of here. Warp speed now!" And they engage warp, fly out of the nebula as Genesis device explodes, killing Khan, taking the Miranda-class vessel with it, and basically creating a whole new planet out of nothing. Which, as you'll come to find out in Star Trek 3, they call the Genesis planet. So they fly out, and that's when Kirk realizes Spock isn't there, goes down to engineering to meet with McCoy, and Spock is wandering around aimlessly inside the glass tube because the radiation has pretty much killed him, and it's pretty much blinded him, so he can't really see. And that's where you get... And this scene was actually very well written and very well acted. I will have to give credit where credit's due. You know, the "I am and always will be your friend." You know. Yeah, pretty much. You know, live long and prosper. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one, and do not grieve. All that good stuff. Great death scene.
Completely
I said completely rendered useless in the next movie.
Yeah,
pretty
which
much.
completely makes this film shit.
Mm-hmm.
In the larger scope of things.
Yep.
It does. But unfortunately, as we always say, hindsight is 20/20, and at the time, I don't think they were thinking they were gonna be another Star Trek movie, so they were like, and Spock, and not Spock, Nimoy didn't want to play Spock anymore, so he was like, well, I'll play Spock in this movie if you kill him.
I would make the case that is kind of true, but as you yourself have said in most of the reviews, like I normally do when we're doing games or films, as a movie, which is all we can look at it as, and as part of a franchise overall, which is all we can look at it as, not a good decision, which we'll get into next month.
Yeah. It's hard to say because, like I said, from what I understand, they wrote and designed this movie to be the end of the franchise, which if they're going into it with the intent of there not being any more movies, with the intent of this is it for Star Trek, Next Generation is going to take over, because at this time Next Generation was pretty much in full swing. It was in like season 2 or 3 or something. They're like, okay, Next Gen has taken off. This is going to be it for the original crew of the Enterprise. This was a great way to go out, and it's a very shocking way to go out with the death of Spock. I thought it was very well done and very well conceived. However, given the fact that we got like 4 more movies after this, it's like, yeah, but if you ask any of the crew members, because I've seen the special features for pretty much all of these movies, and as George Takei is very fond of saying, with every movie, we thought it was going to be the last movie. Everybody on the production thought it was going to be the last movie because we didn't know at the time the longevity of the Star Trek franchise. We thought this was going to be it for our characters because Next Gen had been in full swing. So with every movie, it was designed to be the last movie.
Mm-hmm. True. But I still make the case of, as a movie and as part of the franchise, which is all we can look at it as fans, it's kind of bad. It's sort of like if I go and look at the Clone Saga in Spider-Man, there was real behind-the-scenes reasons for why that was dragged the fuck out longer than it should have been. Does that excuse the fact it was dragged out longer than it should have been and turned into a complete clusterfuck and a complete mess by the end of the saga? Or should I actually mention it's a complete clusterfuck and a complete mess by the end?
Well, I think it's very valid to mention it, but I think it also depends on the reason, because I will still maintain that I don't know what the reasons were for that, but I will maintain that in this instance, there wasn't really anything that they could do about it because the movie has already come out. Like I said, hindsight. By the time they realized, that this wasn't going to be the last movie, the movie had already come out. It's not like they can just go back and completely change the movie to function as a second movie in like a trilogy or something. It doesn't work that way, unfortunately. That's why I'm finding it difficult to really say, well, to basically say, well, they shouldn't have done it this way, or it's shit because of that. Because if you think at it from the perspective of the decision they had made at the time with the information they had going into it, they made the right decision, and it works for the way that it was designed to be.
And like I said, I can understand that, and I'm not insulting the second film as a result. I just think it hurts it as a result slightly in terms of the continuity. But my main complaints, which we'll go into more with the third film, because I would argue, doesn't matter. Changing it in hindsight to try and please the fans is exactly what WWE did when Batista won the Royal Rumble.
True.
And it completely ruined the storyline.
True.
Like this did with Spock's death.
Mm. Although they did leave a few outs, the whole remember thing, and then they had the funerals, and Kirk, another great scene in one of Shatner's probably best on-screen performances, at least in terms of Star Trek. He gives a great eulogy and you can feel the emotion and stuff, which I like how he plays it when he talks about Spock. And then they shoot Spock out into in a torpedo casing, and he lands on the Genesis planet. And the last shot you see, well, that's not the Enterprise, of course, because the final shot is the Enterprise flying off. But basically, the last shot you see is of Spock's torpedo resting in the forest or in a forest of the Genesis planet, which also helps set up the search for Spock. But I don't think that they were intending to do another movie.
I would make the case if like you say, they're supposed to have wrote this as its last ever Star Trek and they were not planning to do it, these outs would have been them nitpicking or trying to wiggle their way out in the third one, because why would they do outs if they had absolutely no chance of doing a third film? And I would say Spock's death, with him land on that planet, was probably to signify more that life is on that planet, and Spock's death has brought around life, thus balance.
Right, and that's perfectly feasible. Yes, I could see that, and that would make a lot of sense. That it was, like you said, it was more for symbolism, which, again, I think makes that the entire ending sequence there from Spock's death onward just really well done and really, really well written and really well acted and executed.
His death was really well done. The dialogue in that is pretty good. His funeral scene is really good as well.
Mm. But it's what they do after it. It's what they do to continue the franchise. I understand. And like you said, we'll get into that with the search for Spock.
Mm-hmm. We'll get into that with the search for more money.
Pretty much.
And can I just ask real quick, did I hear you comment earlier something about they thought this was going to be the last film with these characters because Next Gen was in full swing?
Or it was like in season 2 or 3 or something, and they were like, well, it's successful, it's really successful, we're just going to let Next Gen take it from here.
You realize that Wrath of Khan came out in 1982. Next Gen didn't premiere until 1987.
Really? I thought it premiered earlier than that.
No, Next Gen ran from 1987 until 1995.
Okay, well, then they just didn't think that it would be successful then. Fair enough, my bad. But whatever the reasoning is, like I said, they've constantly said, pretty much from the first movie onward, because the first movie did so poorly from what I understand, they're like, yeah, there's not going to be a second movie. There's not going to be a third movie. And so they were, they went into, and I think that's why, despite how cheesy and how contrived some of the things in these original series movies are, if you look at the acting in it, especially the primary cast, the core cast from the original series, you could tell they put everything into it. You could tell that they love the characters and that they're doing this because they love the world and the characters. And the reason they did that is because, again, they always thought it was going to be the last movie, so they're like, well, we should put everything into it. And this one is no exception. I mean, it's, like I said, and with any movie, there's going to be parts of the movie that are over the top or that are cheesy or that they're bad. There's going to be parts that are badly written. There's no movie is perfect. But, you can see, as we pointed out, the shining moments of this movie, which is primarily the end of the movie. And you can tell they put everything into their performances there. And you can tell, even with the over-the-topness, with the Kirk doing the Khan, and Ricardo Montalban doing the, you're going to be buried alive, and stuff like that. You could tell that. What's that?
I said, I know I said you're saying that you can tell that's him putting his all into it because he loves the character so much. James Franco must have really loved Harry Osborn because it's the exact same delivery as so good.
Well, I don't know about Ricardo Montalban if he loved the character that much, but I have to think that he had some fondness for the character since he agreed to come back and do it.
He had.
And
I'm going to make the case of he had a fondness for the house in which he bought with the money he appeared in Wrath of Khan, based on the fact he couldn't even appear on set with the actors.
Or that's the definition of ego. But
It's a definition of he literally phoned it in. He Skyped it in. He space Skyped.
Yeah, pretty much. I don't know, but is there anything else you guys wanted to bring up about the Wrath of Khan that we haven't discussed already?
No.
No, I think we pretty much covered it.
Excellent. So let's go into final thoughts, and we'll start with Jim.
Overall, well, it had some cheesy. It had some '80s cheese, which is to be expected, and it had some moments that didn't, little continuity errors that didn't make sense. Overall, I thought it was a really well written movie for what it was. I said I have not seen in its entirety Star Trek 3, so I don't have totally the feeling of this and the ending being ruined yet. But overall, it was a really good movie. I also haven't seen TOS, so the bringing back of Khan didn't affect me as much as it might either. But overall, that was a good movie. Though Khan was a pretty good villain. He was a little hammy and over the top, but that's Ricardo Montalban. That was the purpose. Kirk and the crew did a great job portraying the emotions of the crew and everything. It felt dramatic. It did feel like it might have been like 3 episodes of the 2-3 episodes of the show put together, but I think that worked for it. I mean, yes, the first film felt more like a movie, yes, but that was kind of the problem, is that by feeling more like a movie, it felt less like Star Trek. And in this one, I think they kind of went back the other way, as it feels more like Star Trek again, but it doesn't feel like a movie.
I will also make the slight nitpicky comment I made before of calling it TOS. That's a later name that was added to it later on. It's clearly just meant to be called Star Trek.
Mm-hmm.
This is true.
I don't know. But anyway, so effectively, I think it was a good movie. I thought it was well done. I understand there's some problems here and there, but as someone who was seeing it in its entirety for the first time without the pre-exposure of TOS behind it and only having seen the previous movie, I thought it held up pretty well comparatively, and it was certainly better than that first movie in my opinion, if only because it wasn't so goddamn boring. There was actually shit going on.
Right. And one question I will ask you at the end of this, once we get to Star Trek 60 and Discover Country, so keep this one in mind, Jim, I will ask you, and remember this, folks at home, too, because I will ask him this, and the question is, do you think that this movie is overrated?
Okay.
Which, of course, you don't have an opinion yet, because you haven't seen the other movies yet.
Right.
Logically, instead of saying, I'll ask you when we get to movie 6, shouldn't you ask him when we get to movie 12? Due to the fact it's the whole Star Trek movies, and if people are claiming this is the best one of all time, his best one could be movie 11, it could be 10, it could be 8, it could be anywhere after 6.
Right. Well, I'll revisit it at 6, and then I'll revisit it again at the end, because I have a feeling he's going to be like me, where he prefers the next-gen stuff to the classic stuff.
I prefer next-gen stuff too, but I was making the case of it's weird to not say which one, how it's overrated as a whole compared to the entire franchise.
Yeah, he's got a point.
True. So I'll ask at both points.
Especially considering the end of the franchise as of right now is basically this movie.
Pretty much.
But better.
I would agree to that.
In some respects, yes. In a lot of respects, yes. But yeah, Jim, go ahead and finish your final thoughts and your any rating system you prefer.
I was pretty much done. I said, I liked the movie. I thought the acting was pretty good. I thought it did feel like Star Trek. It felt like episodes of the show. And I thought it had positives and negatives. Positives, it felt like Star Trek. Negatives, it didn't feel like a movie. But I think it worked for what it was. I think that Ricardo Montalban did a great job as the villain. He was very fun. He was cheesy and over the top, which was great. The effects for the time were really good. They looked really fun, and a lot of drama. Overall, it was just a fun movie, and it seemed like I really liked it a lot. I would say if I was going to rate this movie, again, with counting including the fact that I have no prior knowledge of TOS aside from the handful of episodes that I've seen, and the
It's
fact
just
that
called Star Trek.
I'm calling it TOS. I don't care. Given that I have not seen any episodes of the original Star Trek series, um, I don't have any, preconceived notions of Khan and any of the other characters that are referenced aside from the previous film. So, from that perspective, I'd say overall I would give this film probably about an 80 to 85. I think it had a few issues here and there, but I thought it was generally a good movie, and I thought they clearly put a lot of effort into it, and that while it could have been improved, it wasn't a bad movie either. It was a good movie for what it was. And that was basically, what they thought was going to be the end of the franchise. So it brought back that real Star Trek feel, that episode feel. It had a villain that everybody really liked in Khan. And at the emotional ending of Spock's death and funeral, it really worked out well. And I think that overall it's a great movie. I would say if you have a chance, if you haven't seen it yet, give this a watch. If you're scrolling through HBO or Showtime or one of the other older movie channels and you see it on, give it a watch if you got nothing to do. It's a good movie.
Fair enough. Over to the mole.
My opinion is this film was really dull. The acting was all over the place. The best part of the movie is the ending. The ending is phenomenal. The ending is really good. I also loved some of the smaller touches, like the close-up shots of the ships as opposed to the last one, which looked bad. They did do a great job of some more model work and more practical effects, which is a bonus. However, yeah, it's dull. It drags on and on and on. It's like, yay, it's over. Oh wait, there's still more. Yay, it's over. Oh wait, there's more. And it's just a really bad film. I'm gonna say, only watch this film if you feel the need to actually watch every single Star Trek film. If not, I'd probably say just avoid most of these films.
Fair enough. All right, and now I'll wrap it up. I really did enjoy this movie. Like I said, it's probably my second favorite of the Star Trek movies. Although I kind of did like Abrams' Trek, so I don't know. But it's at least of it's my second favorite of the original series movies. Probably my third favorite, maybe fourth. I haven't really, because I guess I'm still kind of on the fence with regards to the Abrams Trek stuff. But it is pretty well up there, primarily for the ending, because the ending is so well done, and I do like Ricardo Montalban as Khan in all his glory 80s cheesiness, because it's Ricardo Montalban. Come on, he's awesome. And the story, the whole Genesis device story, well, yeah, a little Deus Ex, a little contrived. It was a good story, and it was a good idea to do that. And I'm actually impressed that they came up with the Genesis device when the Doomsday device was shot down. It's like, well, crap, what do we do now? But yeah, if you're a Star Trek fan, you probably would have seen this movie already. If you're just getting into Star Trek and your first foray into Star Trek was the Abrams Trek movies, and you've seen them both, I would say give this movie a watch. Because then you can see where the inspiration came from for Into Darkness, and then you can make the comparison yourself, and see what you like. There's good and bad in both movies, so take from it what you will. As far as rating is concerned, I would probably give this movie about a 7, maybe a 7.5. It's average at best with all the flaws that this movie has. It is, in my opinion, and I know this is blasphemy in Trekkie circles, and I swear to you I am a Trekkie, so is Jim. But I've probably watched more than he has, because I have watched pretty much every series except for Enterprise, and that's where Jim has me, because I think he's seen Enterprise. But
Which I would also make the case. I'm the only one here who's seen every season.
Fair enough.
He is, and I own Enterprise but have not watched it yet.
Fair enough, but I swear we're all Trekkies here, and yeah, it is not the be all end all, not even close. It's good, but it's not that good. Yes.
I was going to make the case of, just because of what the internet had been calling it a while back. Technically, aren't we not Trekkies?
Yes, we are.
Technically, it wouldn't we be what the hell was the term Trekkers or whatever it was? Because Trekkies are normally the ones that wear the uniforms and take it way too seriously. Where the Trekkers are
Touche.
more fans of the film.
Well,
Touche.
strictly speaking, as I believe those in the hardcore fandom call it, they all refer to themselves as Trekkers, and they view Trekkie as an offensive term that those outside the fandom use.
That was sort of my point, and I was like, yes, I wouldn't consider myself a Trekkie. I'd say I'm a Trekker in that I like
Yeah.
at least some aspects of it, but I don't like go to college and learn Klingon or wear the
Right.
uniforms or anything like that.
Fair enough. Okay, so we're Trekkers, but
I'd wear a uniform if I had it.
regardless of the fact we are pretty big fans of Star Trek, we know our Trek to a pretty large degree. We don't know everything, but we know a lot. And
Marcus and I play STO when it fucking works.
yeah, pretty much. And yeah, and I think we can all, well, maybe not Jim because again he hasn't seen it all yet, but I know Mole and I both agree. Yeah, this film is way overrated. It is not, in our opinion, the best Star Trek movie of all time. Not even close. And it doesn't hold up by today's standards. It's from the dated costumes of Khan's gang to some of the dialogue to just some of the pacing. The pacing is that after going back to see it, the pacing is not that good in this movie. But what is good is a lot of the writing of some of the dialogue, the writing of how a lot of the scenes are set up and are shot, and and then a lot of the acting, primarily from the primary cast. That's where this shines, and you do get that feeling of classic Star Trek. I will give it that it does feel like Star Trek, and I think to me that's why I like this movie more than the first one. As I stated before, the first movie feels more like a movie, but I think that's to the movie's detriment, whereas this movie feels more like Star Trek, but that's because they formulated it and designed it more like they would the TV show, which again is to this movie's detriment.
I would make the case it technically doesn't feel like Star Trek.
Really.
It feels like what Next Gen onwards did, but at the time this film came out, there was no Next Gen, and with what the original Star Trek was, it was more brighter, cheery, and less boring.
True, the color palettes were different. I will give you that. Yeah.
I don't mean the color palette. I mean it's like how to describe. It's basically like the original one was Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, and this film is more akin to something along the lines of your Spider-Mans, like the Amazing Spider-Man, which there's massive differences in how it feels. Like it doesn't have most of the cheese and the love that the other one had. It has the cheese, but in a bad way, if that makes sense. So I'd make the case it doesn't feel like Star Trek at the time it came out. It feels like later Star Trek, which isn't an insult in itself, because you could argue this inspired the later Star Treks.
Which it may have. And maybe that's why I like this movie more than the first one, because it feels more like the Star Trek I grew up with, the Star Trek I knew as a kid, which was Next Generation. Because I grew up with Next Gen. I didn't grow up with the original series. My father's cousin grew up watching the original series, and that's kind of why I got into Star Trek, because my father's cousin and my father both grew up with the original series. And
I thought your father played Sulu.
Racist.
Yes. No. I'd have to say thank you for the compliment. That would be horrible.
That would be. But
which
yeah,
means
so
you're for a treat when we get to the animated series.
Fair enough. But yeah, so that's how I got into Star Trek. Honestly, was through my father and my father's cousin, who, to be honest, my father's two cousins are brothers. I treat them as cousins because age, but because we're only like 10 years apart, so it's kind of like gray area in terms of the age thing. But anyway,
based on your age, I'm imagining your hair's a grey area.
That is true. It's getting there.
I'm sorry, is that too harsh?
No, not at all.
For Christmas,
no, I do. I do, in fact, have some gray hairs because premature graying runs in my father's side of the family. But but yeah, so I would watch the classic episodes when I could, or when I could catch them, on in syndication, on reruns and whatnot. But I pretty much grew up with Next Generation, and that's and everybody has, every Trekker has the series that they grew up with, and that's the series that basically formulated what Star Trek was to them in their minds. And so what Star Trek was to me was Next Gen. And you're absolutely right, Mole. This um, Wrath of Khan was a little progressive for its time, because you're absolutely right. It does feel more. It's kind of like in the middle ground between original series and Next Generation.
Yeah, which I will also say that's something I always find weird, at least in my perspective of how I feel. When people are always like, I grew up with Next Gen is the best. Or I grew up with this one's the best. I grew up more with the original series, a lot with like the animated series and stuff like that, and some of the older ones. Then I would have watched on TV and grew up more with Next Gen. My
Right.
favorite season's Deep Space Nine.
Understandable.
Which is weird because most people are like, yeah, I grew up with this one's my best.
Yeah. Which is understandable. But yeah, so there's strengths, weaknesses for both movies, and you know, we have Mole, who prefers the, from what I understand, and I may be wrong with this, but from what I understand what you said, Mole, we have Mole here who prefers the first movie because it feels more like a movie,
I'd say
whereas,
I made the case, if you're about with the original movie,
yeah.
I made the case of I don't like them
Hmm.
equally, but for
Fair enough.
but for different reasons.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough. So you think they're
And
both shit. Fair enough.
kind of, yeah. And I would also make the case, which is ironic, just because we're going to get to that later on, since you did mention about Abrams' track. I
Hmm.
would make the case Abrams' track feels to me a little bit more like, ironically, the original Star Trek than these films do, because it's brighter, it's more cheerful, it has a bit of goof, it has a bit more like whoa, pow, 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 pow flow to it, like the old TV serials did, and I'm like,
Yes.
which a lot of Trekkie fans write off as, oh, this isn't Star Trek because it's not, and they try and say it's not like Star Trek because it's not like Next Gen or something like that. It's like, it's more in lines with the original series adapted into a more
Modern.
film-like
Yeah.
environment than what the original movie was adapted, if that makes
True.
sense.
True. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, but like you said, we'll get to that at the end of the year. Yeah, like I said, I would definitely give this movie a solid 7, maybe a 7.5. It's pretty good. I would say watch the movie if you're interested in the Wrath of Khan, if you've seen Into Darkness and you want to get into Star Trek, this is a good one to watch because you can make the comparisons. If you're interested in the characters, the original crew characters, this one's actually a pretty good one to watch. I would almost say watch the first one. I can't remember if I actually said that in the first review, but I would almost say watch the first movie if you want an introduction to the characters. But that's pretty much all you're going to get out of the first movie.
And a cool villain that makes you think at the end.
That is true. I did like the villain of that movie. But
Which is kind of funny, which both films we're talking about, the endings are really good.
pretty much.
It's like anti-Stephen King, where it's like, the journey's great, the ending is horrible. These ones, like, the journey's horrible, the endings are good.
Indeed, indeed. But yes, check out the Wrath of Khan. Come up with your own opinion. Let us know if you think this is the greatest Star Trek of all time, or if you think it's overrated. If you haven't seen it yet and you see it because of our review, which I hope that anybody who sees our review who hasn't seen the movie yet will be inspired to go watch it, or even people who have seen the movie might be inspired to watch it again with other thoughts floating in their head. Maybe we'll provoke some sort of internet-wide discussion or argument, which I hope not, but but just some food for thought, because I haven't really heard many people speak about Wrath of Khan in this way. So, and that's really what I'd love to do. I'd love to invoke and provoke discussion, and maybe some controversial discussion, some blasphemy in the circles of the Trekkies. But I think it's a discussion that could be interesting, and a discussion that, quite frankly, I think is needed because there's too much of the blind. Oh, it's the best thing ever. I know I've said that many times, and as a fan of Star Trek, it's always bugged me that they're like, Wrath of Khan is the best one ever. I'm like, no, it's not.
Yeah. Which I will say, if they're watching this, they're probably going to find it blasphemy in itself, because my hopes and feelings is people will listen to this, understand what we want, and if they took anything away from it, it's that not everyone likes it. Like my rating for it was completely ass. Avoid this film.
True. But then again, at the end of the day, at the end of the day, what this is an opinion piece, and it's our opinion. So, take our opinions or disregard them. It's up to you. But hopefully, at the end of the day, regardless if you agree with our opinions, hopefully it's made you think, and that would make me happy if it made people think. So. Thank you, Jim, who's been silent over there, and Mole for joining me for Wrath of Khan.
You're welcome.
And thank you.
And join us next month in March for Star Trek III, The Search for Spock. Spoilers, they find him.
Because some little bastard kid at the library drew a circle around him.
Jim, what if I told you about scrolling library books?
Hey, Jim would never spoil a library book. That's fighting words right there.
Okay, then. So, thank you all for listening, and live long and prosper. Until next time.